Hey, folks, welcome into the It's Official podcast. He's Jeff Siegel. I'm Jeremy Plonk, representing First Bet and Express Bet. We take on 5 hot topics each week in horse racing. Got a lot to discuss this week, not only domestically, but abroad. So we're going to get to the action here in just a moment. It's Indiana Derby week, Iowa Derby week. If you're into those regional derbies and the connections of 3-year-old horses, Jeff, are certainly into those because you got a lot of money to run for within that division. Should be a busy weekend of racing this weekend. Of course, the 4th of July holiday coming up on Thursday. So big week of racing across the country and abroad.
I didn't count how many stakes we're going to have in North America over the 3 or 4 day weekend, however you want to label it. But there's a lot of good racing this week, surprisingly so. Sometimes these like Memorial Day or even Labor Day, but mostly like Memorial Day, it's kind of flat sometimes. This one's good. And we've got derbies everywhere. All the little tracks get a chance to shine. And they pick up these wannabe derby type horses who never were as good as they were hoped to be, but they have their chance to make some serious money this weekend. So good gambling ahead. If you like to play those regional tracks and their best cards, they'll put everything they got into these cards. So there's going to be some good races there. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We've got Stronghold, the Santa Anita Derby winner, heading to Indiana. So that's a big one. And we've got City of Troy, the Epsom Derby winner, back this weekend as well. So the Santa Anita and Epsom Derby winners in action this Saturday. We'll talk about some of that coming up. Let's get to our topics on the big board this week as we start our review. And it was a topsy-turvy division in the handicap division, the classic, if you will, for the Breeders' Cup. The older horses in the U.S. haven't really had a lot of clarity to this point. And we had a rematch of the Pimlico Special from a couple weeks ago in the Stephen Foster at Churchill Downs. That race turned out to be rather key, but it didn't come back the same way that they finished at Old Hilltop.
Right outside the quarter pole, Kings Barnes heads for home on the Foster, taking charge from First Mission, who fights on but is back into second. Pyrenees switched outside from third. Not today for Skippy Longstocking, nor Disarm. Final 16th, it's Kings Barnes bounding past the Twin Spires, clear by 3. Pyrenees runs up into second, but it will be Kings Barnes in the Foster.
Kings Barnes over Pyrenees there. They flipped that result at Pimlico several weeks back. Jeff, Kings Barnes was a horse who, when he had his comeback race at Keeneland, he looked good. He looked like he could be the goods on the East Coast as far as the handicap division goes. He's starting to assert himself a little bit here as we get towards summer. What do you make of Kings Barnes in the division overall?
I've been a big fan of his throughout his career. And after he won the Ben Ali, I think we talked about that on this show about how Kings Barnes is Uncle Mo Colt, a late developing type. We talked about his time to step up to the plate and exert his superiority. He hadn't really had that chance other than the Kentucky Derby last year when he didn't show up, basically. Right. But after he got beat in the Pimlico Special, in which he was passing a very slow pace,
right,
and then he had every chance, hit the front at the 3/16 pole, and Pyrenees just went by him. I'm saying, well, a good horse is supposed to win that kind of race, Jeremy. So
yeah,
I was a little disappointed. But this is the Kings Barnes in this race, Stephen Foster, that I was expecting to see last time. And I was dumbfounded. I'm saying, I've not that I haven't seen it before, but the other horse Colt was so definitive in victory, and this time Kings Barnes just toyed with him. And I came up with a theory, and I wanted you to throw it by you to see if you can understand this or agree with it. Kings Barnes is a good horse. He's a strong, powerful colt, but he doesn't have a great turn of foot. He doesn't blast. He's kind of a grinder, a good high-class grinder, but not somebody who wants to be in a race that's reduced to an 1/8 of a mile sprint. That's not his thing. When he ran in the Pimlico Special, they went 50-1, 115-2. And they were all just kind of 2-minute licking to the top of the stretch. And the race was really reduced to maybe 3/16 of a mile, 1/8 of a mile sprint. And he doesn't have that turn of foot. He really doesn't. He tried hard, but Pyrenees can quicken a little bit better. So if you're going to put Kings Barnes in a race with Pyrenees, and it's only going to be 3/16 of a mile, Pyrenees is probably going to win. But what happened here is instead of going 115 and change, it went 111 and change.
Right. Different game.
Different game altogether. Now the stamina part was more important than it was the acceleration. So knowing that now, I know it now. I don't know whether I'm pretty sure Todd, realized it. don't slow this horse up. I mean,
Right.
don't suck the field along and expect to outkick a good horse here. He's not going to do it. Make it a normally run, 3/4 and 11, half and 46 and change. And that's where King's Barn can beat you. And I think from now on, this guzzling and slowing it down and playing it cute, throw that out the window for this horse. Some horses it works, but not for him. So I think King's Barn's going to be okay, especially when they go a little faster. My fear is when they go a mile and eighth, mile and 1/4, they're going to have to go back to their slowing up stuff.
Right.
And then he's going to get outfooted. So at least I think I have a theory as to explain why the two different results.
And if you're right about that, then the Whitney's a great race for him because that race is always fast. A mile and an eighth at Saratoga. They play quick. They got to go fast into the first turn around that 9 furlong oval up there at the Spa. That race always has legitimate fractions. A lot of times we say the miler can get a mile and an eighth in that race because it's usually a very speedy race. So if you want a fast pace for King's Barnes, maybe the Whitney is the race we want to see him in this summer versus trying to wait for the Jockey Club Gold Cup or something like that at a mile and 1/4 in a race. Like you said, that could get back to some of those pedestrian fractions.
Right.
When they get to Del Mar for the Breeders' Cup Classic this year, and that's where all the money is going to be at the end of the season, they're going to go quick there, right? I mean, there's going to be West Coast, it's going to be West Coast speed, and you know what you're going to get in that race. So you're going to get pace in the big one. Why try to slow them down between now and then? I'd say move on to the Whitney for the connections of King's Barnes. Another good weekend for Shree DeVille. Again, we saw Pyrenees run second there. She had multiple stakes on the card that she was able to come away with victories at Churchill Downs, similar to what she did Preakness weekend. So good news, tip of the cap there all around. Some disappointing efforts, though, in that Stephen Foster, Jeff. What's the deal with First Mission? He hadn't really thrown a clunker in other than the one horrible race that he had on his resume, obviously. But everything else, he's been a pretty consistent puncher. He had things, they went quick, but not overwhelmingly fast. And he just threw out the submission towel there. I'm not quite sure what to make of him moving forward. I certainly don't want him as a mile and 1/4 horse, as a classic horse. First Mission right now, you're starting to think Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile is his best move.
I agree. His form suggested, just like it suggested with King's Barnes prior to the Pimlico Special, he was right there to grab control of this division. It was his to grab, and he made the lead, and that's Skippy Longstocking was on the outside of him, and he's a decent sort of colt, although I don't think anybody would ever run away from Skippy Longstocking in terms of the fear factor. Right. And they both were on the lead, and when they were asked to quicken, I mean, I think First Mission tried to. I just think he was found out a little bit there about him going a mile and eighth with somebody laying on him the whole way. So they both have a chance to bounce back and make amends. But until they win 2 or 3 in a row, I don't think I can trust any one of them to come back and do it again, just as King's Barnes does it. So right now, Jeremy, we have a situation where there seems to be a lot of taking turns in this older division. What do you think? Who's the leader?
Well, I think when you look at the 2 big wins this year, you've got to say it's National Treasure. There have only been 4 Grade 1 route races on dirt for the older horses this year. We've got them listed there. January 27th, the Pegasus World Cup won by National Treasure. March 3rd, the Santa Anita Handicap won by Newgate. June 8th, the Met Mile was won by National Treasure. And then June 29th, the Stephen Foster won by King's Barnes, which we just saw. So National Treasure's got the win in the Pegasus in a mile and an eighth around 2 turns. In the 1-turn Met Mile at Saratoga, they went a little longer in the Met Mile. So again, we had not the 1-turn Met Mile of past years. So he's got 2 2-turn wins going, at essentially 2-turn races. And I got to say that National Treasure, although he strikes no fear in me, or I don't think a lot of horses or horsemen, he's the leader in the division at this point. The ones in the gold box that we have on our graphic for the benefit of those of you on our audio podcast, those include the 3-year-olds who have won route races on the dirt this year in Grade 1 company. Fierceness, Muth, Sierra Leone, Stronghold won the preps towards the Triple Crown races that were Grade 1s. And then, of course, the 3 Triple Crown race winners, Mystic Dan seized the Gray Door Knock. Again, you could shake those 7 up in a hat and throw them out, and I don't think anybody's trying to avoid any of them when it comes time for the Breeders' Cup Classic. So this division, I don't know. I mean, look, we weren't talking White Abarrio this time last year, Jeff, right? I mean, he sprung out of, a fantastic effort in the Whitney at Saratoga and went on to win the Breeders' Cup Classic. We must be looking at something similar this year, right? There's going to be some August to November surprise, I think, in the Classic division, right? It can't be the horses on this page that are going to just run off at 3-5 when we get to the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Which is one of the reasons why we'll discuss a possibility for the Breeders' Cup Classic that's over in Europe. We'll talk about him later on. And that might be enticing to anybody who wants to take a shot in a division that nobody can really be dependent upon to run 2 in a row, or maybe 2, but not 3. So anyway, it's going to make for some very interesting and lucrative racing in the fall leading up to the Breeders' Cup itself. But there are some very valuable races that we'll see all of these. I don't know about the 3-year-old division. Usually you look ahead to the 3-year-olds, say, okay, they'll advance to run against older horses and put their, make themselves major classic contenders, which may happen or may not. But the 3-year-olds don't look overly exciting. I mean, they're exciting because they're taking turns too, but they're not, no one's fearing them. So anyway, good racing to come, and we'll see a lot of good racing in the older division in the fall, and maybe it'll shake itself out. But it didn't, for me anyway. It certainly did not shake itself out last year when White Barrio won. I don't think I ever disliked a classic winner. It turned out to be the classic winner more than White Barrio, and now he's running like I thought he was going to run last November. Can't find it.
Yeah, and maybe he wakes back up. He's gone back to Saffie Joseph. So we talk about this topsy-turvy division. You've got last year's classic winners switching barns from Dutro back to Saffie Joseph now. 2 horses from Japan could be coming over, we thought, for the Breeders' Cup Classic, but that's been reduced to 1 possibility now amongst the horses we saw in the Kentucky Derby, because news came out today, a multiple fracture for T.O. Password, the horse who was a good 5th, 6th in the Kentucky Derby, and a lot of folks thought this might be a progressive horse, very lightly raised, who we might see back here for the Breeders' Cup Classic in the fall. He's out now, so take him out of consideration right now. Forever Young, of course, the horse who lost the 3-way photo in the Kentucky Derby, he might be the horse to beat the Breeders' Cup Classic right now, Jeff. And I don't know if you laid odds at it. I want to take anybody at a shorter price than Forever Young. I think, he looks as good as any, but he's got to pass, obviously, the older horse question and the older horse test when we get there. This is why we're calling it a topsy-turvy division right now. The horse from Japan may be the horse for this year's Breeders' Cup Classic, but we're going to find out. We got a lot of racing between now and then, and of course, we'll be covering it all for you here on the podcast. Let's go to our second topic this week on the big board. At least they posted it, and by they, we mean the Churchill Downs Stewart, and by it, we mean the inquiry light. They finally posted an inquiry. No inquiry in the Kentucky Derby. No inquiry June 22nd when Vava in the Chicago handicap just went bonkers, bouncing off of horses in the lane. But we did get the inquiry light in the Florida Lee, and it still didn't matter. It was Scylla on top, and her number stayed up.
They head for home, and Scylla with a big move on the far turn is up, contending for the lead. Taxed fights on a Colt's in tight. Kedra's in tight too. Shotgun Huddy down toward the rail. There's a furlong to go. Scylla takes the lead. Some crowding in behind. Kedra took the worst of it. Taxed fights on Shotgun Huddy, but it's Scylla in front. Scylla's in front to the wire. Shotgun Huddy runs up into second. Scylla got it.
A lot of bumping there. Who was at fault? Stu's deemed no one really, that it was just kind of contact that was mutual amongst different rivals in that race. Scylla's number stayed up, Jeff. They can't beat her to the wire to this point, and she's looking like a good one. Another out of closed hatches. The Star Millionaire mare for Bill Mott has produced another major winner. Of course, she had Tacitus a few years ago. Last week, she had Batten Down win the Ohio Derby. He's a 3-year-old, and now Scylla, her 4-year-old offspring, looks like one of the better fillies and mares in the country after winning the Florida League.
On pure form, she's almost impossible to fall. I mean, she's won 5 out of 7 with a second and a third. She's really, really starting to get good. And I remember when she won at Churchill, going that 1-turn mile, she won by 7. It was just an allowance race, but you knew she was a Sticks quality. Yeah. Came back and won at Churchill, going a distance to ground, soft pace that day, and she took care of it. Here, I mean, she had to work a little harder. This was a tougher group. She caused bumping. She bumped herself. It was like a fist fight out there. Yeah. And I think they probably felt, unsportsmanlike conduct, right? Both sides,
offsetting penalties,
right?
Yeah. Right.
So they didn't change that. The one filly that I felt sorry for is the one that I thought was going to win, Shotgun Hottie. She was down on the inside, and it was hard to tell from the pan, whether there was room or not, whether she couldn't accelerate or whether there just wasn't enough room. So I was lucky enough to see the stretch drive from the behind, not from back. She had nowhere to go. She wanted to go through. It was about a half a lane there, and she tried to go through, but there was nowhere. And the jock was trying to get her to go, and then the fillies turned around. What do you want me to do? Jump over that filly? I can't get through.
Yeah.
Finally, she got through at the end, and then once she cleared that horse right off the rail, she exploded, and she should have won the race. So I think of anybody coming out of that race, I would prefer Shotgun Hottie down the road. Now I'm sure that they'll meet again sometime. The number came up rather modest. It was a slow pace. Slow paces generally do not manufacture fast times, so I'm not going to hold that against them. But I think the first two are legitimately Breeders' Cup filly and mare distaff type of fillies, especially with some more time to grow up and mature. The question, though, is where do they fit with the biggies of the division? I mean, the really top ones, the Adair Manners of the world, and those kind of. So are they close, or are they just like second tier?
Well, Adair Manor, we're not quite sure. She went on the road and won the Apple Blossom, so that's good that she got out of her home track there in Santa Anita and won on the road. But it wasn't the strongest edition underneath, I don't think, of the Apple Blossom. So we haven't seen her go head-to-head. Idiomatic being beat by Randomized last time out in the Phipps on the Belmont undercard at Saratoga, that made her a little vulnerable, right? So, is that gap between what you're saying, the top of the division, and some of these up-and-comers, it may not be that wide. And when we said it's a topsy-turvy classic division, it's a really good distaff division because you've got the 3-year-old filly Torpedo Anna to talk about in this discussion as well. Mm-hmm. She won't meet the older mares until it's time in the Breeders' Cup. I would assume you'd see her in a race like the Cotillion at Parks. But, Idiomatic, Randomized, pretty mischievous horses coming out of that Phipps. Could see them back in the Personal Ensign. Scylla could be in a race like that. And of course, you got the big one at Keeneland in the fall, the Spinster. So who goes to the Personal Ensign? Who goes to the Spinster? There's 4 or 5 of those really good older fillies and mares on the East Coast. These two included that you're talking about, Scylla and Shotgun Hottie coming out of the Florida Lee. Those two are probably going to divide up, right? And I would guess that most of the horses that we saw, I don't know, Idiomatic could go back to Keeneland. She's run well there in the past. So maybe Brad Cox will want to run her in the Spinster and not go back to Saratoga where she just got beat and run her in the Personal Ensign. So, I think there's going to be a little bit of avoiding each other in the division, but you can't avoid all of them. There's a lot of good mares in the East Coast right now. Adair Manor's going to sit out in the West Coast. She's going to do her thing. She'll win the Zenyatta at Santa Anita a couple weeks before the Breeders' Cup and make her way down to Del Mar as the West Coast one to beat. So a really good division amongst those. And again, Randomized, maybe the speed and the bias and the pace carried her to the upset victory over Idiomatic last time, or maybe she's just getting really good too. So a fun division in the Breeders' Cup Classic. And Churchill Downs Stewards, we questioned them a couple weeks ago. Were they ever going to flick the light? They finally did it.
Yeah, well, they may have tried to miss that, but you couldn't. You could see that from St. Louis, that foul or the bumping. Anyway, I tell you one thing that Shotgun Hottie did for me. Getting back to her is I don't think she, as good as I like. There's been racing. I don't think she's at that level yet because she did run against the Adair Manor and the Apple Blossom, and the Adair Manor just destroyed her. And now Shotgun Hottie coming off that win in the DuPont at Pimlico and a winning race in this race, even though she didn't actually win it, just makes Adair Manor look so much better to me. Right. She always does. And the good news for her is it's like playing Alabama and Tuscaloosa. She's got Del Mar. You got to come to her place now. None of these road trips, none of these road games anymore for her. She's got the home court advantage, and I just think that at Del Mar, she is going to be hard to beat for any of these. Don't forget last year out here in California, Idiomatic was incredibly game and victory, but they all kind of finished in a heap, if you remember that race. Yep. So I don't know how – when Adair Manor wins, I'll give this credit for her. She wins from here to the next post. She doesn't make it close. So anyway, that division will shake out, but there's a lot of good racing ahead in the fall to make them to find out who the best is before the Breeders' Cup, and we'll see what transpires.
With my Sooners joining the SEC yesterday, Jeff, don't give me bed sweats and night sweats already about road trips to Tuscaloosa. I don't want to have to worry about that yet. It's only July, so come up with another reference than an SEC road trip. I don't want to be making any of those.
Vanderbilt.
There you go. It's like a road trip to Vanderbilt.
All right.
We'll head to Nashville for that one.
There you
All
go.
right, let's talk about some 2-year-olds. It's mid-year baby talk, our third topic. You wonder, is it too early to be talking about the 2-year-olds? Last year around this time, we were talking about horses like Bright Work and the Wine Steward. They turned out to be pretty decent. So our early season stakes winners can turn out to be horses that are important. And at Churchill Downs, we had a couple of those on the closing weekend. We had the Debutante Stakes and also the Bashford Manor. First up, the Debutante, Vodka with a Twist.
Daisy Duke from last is rallying, so too Glee, but they're inside the final furlong, and Vodka with a Twist is clear by 4. And Vodka with a Twist goes gate to wire in the Debutante. The final margin is 3.
So this is a rags to riches story, if you will, but it's not the connections who started off with this $2,000 purchase. That was the mother-son combination of Debbie McCutcheon and her son, the trainer Jason McCutcheon. This horse was privately sold, picked up by Phil D'Amato before this victory off the maiden win last time out at Churchill Downs. What do you make of Vodka with a Twist?
Well, I liked a filly in that race called So There She Was, who finished second and ran at least as good, if not better, than I hoped that she would. Mm-hmm. She was second in her maiden at Santa Anita, had come back and worked well. So I'm handicapping this race. I said, well, I know that she's better than A, B, C, and D. And I looked at Vodka with a Twist, and I said, she won a sloppy track race. Number was okay, beaten on the square at Keeneland. She probably doesn't know that much. Mm. Anyway, so she comes into this race, and for Phil D'Amato, which is who's a great trainer, and she gets bet like this race was run 2 weeks ago. I mean,
yeah,
she's 4 to 5. I mean, I think she went from like 9 to 5 to 4 to 5 in the last minute or so. I mean, they bet this filly like she absolutely could not lose. I'm saying, I don't know what they know that I don't know, because I've watched this horse train. I've watched, I figured out the pace and all that. She's bought $2,500, which is usually it's barely a bid. You know what I'm saying? It might have been one bid. I don't know. And she won this race with such authority. I was blown away. I said, I don't mind missing things. I don't mind horses improving, but she was good. I mean, she was really good in this race, because the horse filly that ran second was 5 clear of everybody else. How much better can she run? And she ran just as fast as the Colts did later in the day. But that's no ordinary colt that ran the same final time. We'll talk about him in a minute. So I don't care how much she cost or what her legs look like. 1,000 Words is a freshman stallion. I think he's already had like 6 or 7 winners, so he's doing really well for a horse that kind of nobody really cared much about. Baffert trained him. Right. It's just a nice horse. That's all. But I'm all in on this race. I think it's going to be a productive race, and I don't know what Doug O'Neill's going to do with So There She Was, but I don't think he's going to go back to a maiden race. I think he can probably figure out a stakes he can go to. And as far as Vodka with a Twist is concerned for Phil D'Amato, I don't know whether it's in the cards to bring her back to California now, because that's where Phil D'Amato is stabled. But I do know one thing. If you got a 2-year-old filly and you're not in California, don't come, because you've got 19 of them that Bafferts that haven't started yet, you know. So just keep her where she is. I think she'll win a lot of races.
Well, look, this has been a productive path. I mean, you had Wonder Wheel 2 years ago out of this race, and she ended up being the champion 2-year-old filly. Right. Again, we talked Bright Work last year, ended up winning multiple stakes at Saratoga then. So this could be a race that, at least for the 2-year-old talk, can continue throughout the end of the season. Will they go on to become great older horses? Probably not. You got to go back in history with the Debutante to find the Silver Bullet Days, the Chalukis, Gold Mover, horses like that. But you're getting back 20 years. In today's game, if they're good now in June, they could be good to the end of the year, and even a champion 2-year-old filly like Wonder Wheel. But again, looking at those as 3- and 4-year-olds down the line, maybe not so much. Now, you talked about the impressive 2-year-old colt. Politically correct, the winner of the Bashford Manor Stakes. Let's go back to Travis Stone's call of that one this Saturday at Churchill.
They're off the turn, and Politically Correct has taken charge, and he's kicking in a big way. 6 lengths in front. Smokin' Wicked up into second. Ivan the Great is third. They're coming for the finish. Politically Correct, last to first. Dazzling in the Bashford Manor. Wins by...
That's the way you like to see it. Overcome some adversity, finish up looking strong, putting some gap and spread eagle in a field like that. Really impressive win for Politically Incorrect.
He won his debut, his maiden race, first start, gate to wire. He did that at Churchill and won nicely. Number was average, he went off in this race at 7-1, which is what you expect. Mm-hmm. This race he came from stone dead last to win. I don't think it was by design. He didn't break well, and the jock did the right thing. He didn't rush him. He just said, okay, we'll settle, and we'll make one run and see if that works. And boy, did it ever. So now you got a colt who's won wire to wire. You got a horse same horse won from dead last. He ran 2/100ths of a second. Sounds like the end of the 220 high hurdles or something. The difference between these runners. 2/100ths a second faster than the filly did. They're both good. They really are. I mean, you don't expect it. Sometimes you see them going 3/4, these 2-year-olds, and they stagger home. They end up going 11 and change, and But these two are going to be good, and I'm very excited to see what this colt brought. And $195,000 for a colt by Violence, and Violence is a good stallion. Now, most of his better horses have been colts, but most of them are 7/8 to a mile. But the way this colt won in this race, I'm not so sure. I'm being out of a mare by Candy Ride, why he can't go on. I think they could be dreaming with this one, really.
Right. We talked about the Wine Steward winning this race last year, and then he went right to the wire at Keeneland in the big grade one there, going 2 turns in the fall meet, the Breeders' Futurity, before being sidelined before the Breeders' Cup. And he's come back to be a pretty decent 3-year-old. Classic Empire won this race back in 2016 when the Breeders' Cup won a 2-year-old championship. So it's not like you got to go back to the favorite tricks and some ancient history. Boston Harbor winners of the Bashford Manor who've had some success. Classic Empire 2016, not that far ago. Not that long ago, and not that far back in history. So we'll see what Politically Correct has for the second half of the year. But that's our mid-year baby talk as we hit the second half of the season. The 2-year-old's really going to get juiced up now with Saratoga and Del Mar right around the corner. Our fourth topic on the big board this week is must-see TV. You got to watch this weekend. A couple big runners in action. One domestically and one abroad. And the one abroad is City of Troy, winner of the Epsom Derby last time out. He's going to take on older horses at Sandown on Saturday. We'll talk about the Eclipse Stakes in a moment. But let's send you back to the Epsom Derby, where he made history chasing the loose horse home.
Black striped sleeves, and City of Troy now coming through under Ryan Moore. He's found a great seam as they run down the straight, and City of Troy has quickened up very well to lead, but Ambiente Friendly trying to challenge as long as the loose horse doesn't get in the way. Then Los Angeles. City of Troy leads the way in the Betfred Derby from Ambiente Friendly and Los Angeles, racing inside the final furlong. City of Troy by 2 lengths to Ambiente Friendly, then Los Angeles. What a comeback here by City of Troy. City of Troy bouncing back 3 lengths clear. A brilliant win in the Betfred Derby.
It was stunning that City of Troy was beaten in his 3-year-old debut. This was more of the horse we thought after his highly impressive debut in the 2-year-old season, Jeff. He's by Triple Crown winner Justified, Aidan O'Brien and company. He's the 4-9 favorite amongst the books as I checked the odds this morning for the race at Sandown on Saturday. Can he take on the older horses in the Eclipse Stakes and knock them off? What do you make of it?
I think he can, but this is no empty stall that he has to run against. Colt named White Birch won 3 group races in a row this year. Just beat Auguste Rodin, who came out of that race to win a Grade 1, Group 1. He's an improving, talented, very, very dangerous older horse facing the 3-year-old. I know there's a weight edge that City of Troy gets because of that, but still, City of Troy. And the reason why we like to talk about him for 2 reasons. One, of course, he's by Justify, so we have a North American connection there. But they continue to say that City of Troy is going to be in the Breeders' Cup. We don't know what race. Probably the Classic. They were originally talking about maybe the Travers, but the intention is to bring him here and prove himself on dirt. He's got nothing but a dirt pedigree anyway. So I think we're going to follow him because we talked about earlier in the program about who the leader is in the division, the Classic division. Maybe end up being City of Troy if he isn't already,
Right.
So I'm very much interested to see how he performs, because if he can beat White Birch, man, I mean, he's almost right there, if not there itself. And so City of Troy, it's my time. I think it's like in the morning. I think it's closer to noon in the east if you're not there. But tune it on if you can. Turn it on. and C, a very important Breeders' Cup Classic contender run. And the way he won the Epsom Derby. By the way, I want to make a mention. We saw the Epsom Derby there.
Mm-hmm.
That loose horse that was finished ahead of him.
Yeah.
He stumbled badly 2 strides out of the gate. So he did all of that running, the entire 1.5-mile course on his own. And he gave himself one heck of a ride. He didn't get in trouble at all. He sat in the middle. He settled. He made his move on Tatnam Corner or whatever it's called.
Right.
And then opened up and held sway. I was very impressed with the ride the horse gave himself.
He was inspired by Bodie Express in the Preakness a couple of years ago, apparently. As for City of Troy, it's the same ownership group as a lot of the Aidan O'Briens, obviously, the Coolmore clan, as they call them, Magner, Tabor, Smith and Company. They're also the owners of Sierra Leone, and that's why this horse was talked about possibly for the Travers. But Sierra Leone's headed for the Travers. Why run your 2 3-year-olds against each other this early in the campaign in the Travers when Sierra Leone probably will be the favorite for the Travers Stakes the way it looks? So I understand that completely. They're taking on older horses early in the campaign, though. The 3-year-old taking on elders, so that tells you what they think of the horse going in the Eclipse. And the bookmakers have made him, again, a 4-9 favorite right now to win that race at Sandown. It's the Eclipse Stakes. Again, you can check that out and bet it with First Bet and Express Bet coming up this weekend. That's just one of 2 horses we've got to look at, though, in our must-see TV segment, Jeff.
Yeah, it's good racing. You don't expect to see this kind of competition this early in the year. They usually wait until the fall, then run them like this. But that just tells me how confident Aidan is. So anyway, we'll watch that and a bunch of other good. I tell you what, though, there's another race over the weekend. Actually, it's Friday that I'm not going to miss either. This is a fun horse. I'd say this is one of my favorite horses.
I can tell you always light up when you talk about this.
I mean, he doesn't get the credit that he deserves because he runs in a division that nobody knows anything about. It's like, I don't know. It's like and by the way, we're talking about Next, the marathoner, but I love what the trainer said about him. He says he's a gelding. We treat him, carefully. We want him to run forever. So you're not going to see anything out of the ordinary from how we manage this horse. We're going to protect him every stage of the race. And that's one of the reasons why he's won so many races is because he only runs when he's ready, and they know exactly what the race is going to be because they only have how many? There's 6 or 8 marathons in the States. That's it. They know where they are. They know how to get there. Anyway, I'm looking forward to Next run again. This one in the Brooklyn race, by the way, that he won last year.
Yeah, he was 3rd choice in the race last year. He's not going to be 3rd choice this time around. Trainer Doug Cowens has this one with a 50% win rate over his career, 10 for 20 lifetime. He's earned more than $1 million. Next goes into Brooklyn, 11 furlongs on the main track at Belmont at the Big A on Friday. Let's take you back to one of his most impressive victories last year. Again, he's only run once so far this year. It was a victory. 2 starts back in the Greenwood Cup. He put from here to downtown Philly on the rest of the field.
As they go through the turn and hit the top of the stretch, Next, a gray horse on a gray day, and he is in command, riding with Biden in on the rail, splashing up the rail, but it is all about Next, the true marathoner, just striding home. It's just a matter of how much he wants to win by with a 16th left to go, and Next gets the win in the Greenwood Cup. Next, your front-running winner.
So Next was calling Next, and next up for him again is a big race on Friday. There's not a lot of competition in there. I don't think that can beat him. Only 7 have entered. He's got 6 challengers, including the Suburban winner, Krupe. That's probably his toughest challenge in there. Mask Parade did win the Temperance Hill in the marathon division at Oaklawn earlier this year. Those are the 2 main contenders. Again, a field of 7. It's race number 8 on the card Friday, Belmont at the Big A. That's one of our 2 must-see TV races. Friday, we've got the return of Next in the Brooklyn. And then on Saturday, it's City of Troy in the Eclipse at Sandown overseas. We always wrap up our It's Official podcast with a look ahead to a horse who you'll be talking about down the road. Our stars of tomorrow, AZ Wildcat gets the bill this week from Jeff, a debut winner at Los Alamitos over the weekend.
With a well-timed bid on the extreme outside, and AZ Wildcat's going with What About Q? Soon afterwards, it's AZ Wildcat moving into the lead. Power Connections battling on bravely. What About Q? Can Do No Better is back to third. And past the 16th pole, AZ Wildcat kicks clear of Power Connection and runs out an easy winner. AZ Wildcat over Power Connection and What About Q? Caitlin Fever fourth, Rapida fifth.
You know, Jeff, when you talk about some of these 2-year-old debut winners, a lot of times it's trainers, right? Who's got them ready to go and cranked up. John Sadler, not known for having 2-year-old debut winners. I went through the BetMix database and looked it up. He's had 10 over the last 4 years. So he's due for about 2.5 2-year-old debut winners a year. This was one of them, an AZ Wildcat. What do you make of it?
Well, we had works on her on XBTV, so it wasn't like we were guessing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of these, okay, I don't care who's in the race. I don't even care if there's a Baffert in the race. She's going to win first time out. She trained so impressively. And here's the thing. She brought $200,000 a year. Like, now you've seen Munning's offspring bring that kind of money.
Yeah.
But there's not one graded stakes winner in the first 4 generations of her pedigree. She was bought for a lot of money because she looks the part. She is a big, good-looking, athletic, just has that beautiful head and beautiful eye. I mean, she's like, I don't even care what her pedigree is, I'm buying her. And it turns out that she's buying Munnings. And you know, Munnings can get you a really fast filly.
Right.
And you put that on top of the fact that when you watch her breeze on video, she looks like she could have worked in 58 anytime she wanted to.
Right.
So she won this race, and she didn't win it by 10 or 12. But she came home the last 8th and 12 flat. She did not get a good early position. She was down on the inside. She was shuffled back. We didn't show that part of the video, but if you want to go back and watch it, you'll see. Took a lot of dirt, angled out 3 wide between horses, and then that filly who was second in that race was very well meant as well. Power Connection. That was a New Mexican, from the first crop of authentic, by the way, Power Connection. This is going to be a very productive, highly rated race. I expect AZ Wildcat to go right into stakes. Power Connection was second. Will be 1-5 at Delmar. I know because I'm making the line. I'm going to put her at 1-5. So I think when you look back at this 5 furlong maiden fairly race for 2-year-olds at Low Sal, you're going to see some fillies that get 15 lengths in that race that can run. So anyway, I can't wait for her to take on the Baffert Brigade, because, you know, there's 3 or 4 of those that are already ready to win. Sure. And now she's got to go right into stakes. But that's one of the fillies that I think will get a lot of headlines when she makes her next start. AZ Wildcat. Good filly, really good filly.
AZ Wildcat. That's our star of tomorrow. Maybe we'll see her on the Del
Monte. You guys play them this year? Do you guys play them in the Big 12?
We played the Arizona Wildcats. They're now in the Big 12, and we're out of the Big 12.
Oh, that's right. Well, you played them last year out in the bowl game. I won't mention that.
The bowl game. Yeah, we don't. That's the second time you've stabbed me in the back on this podcast.
Well, I got to get it in now.
Let's review these topics before I have to hit the end button. It's a topsy-turvy division amongst the Breeders' Cup Classic horses. King's Barnes turned the tables on the Stephen Foster on Pyrenees, the horse who beat him in the Pimlico Special. We talked about who might be leading a division where National Treasures wins right now. Look best in the division in the Met Mile and the Pegasus World Cup. At least they posted it. Yes, the inquiry light did come on at Churchill Downs in the Florida Lee. No change in the order of finish, though, as Scylla continued her ascent up the Distaff division and also continued a great year for the broodmare Close Hatches. Her son battened down, won the Ohio Derby last week, and now a second straight stakes winner from her, the 4-year-old Scylla. Our mid-year baby talked about 2 stakes winners at Churchill Downs over the weekend. Vodka with the Twist, Rags the Richest story who's getting good in the filly division, and then the Colt Politically Correct, a dominant winner showing a variable running style in the 2 career starts. It looks like that one's moving forward in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Division. Must-see TV this week includes Friday's race, where the Colt Hero next runs in the Brooklyn Stakes, over 11 furlongs in the Marathon Division. And then the International Star, we go to Sandown, the Coral Eclipse Stakes on Saturday morning for City of Troy, the Epsom Derby winner running this weekend for trainer Aidan O'Brien. Could be a precursor towards his trip here for the Breeders' Cup Classic. And our star of tomorrow was AZ Wildcat for trainer John Sadler, a winner at Los Alamitos over the weekend. Those 5 topics are now official because Jeff Siegel and I said so. That's how we play the game, and we'll re-rack it and do it again next week, every Tuesday, with 5 new topics on the board. Every once in a while, there's too much to cram into one show, or late-breaking news, or just some irreverent topics we want to throw in as a bonus. This week, we've got a serious topic to throw in as a bonus. It was just announced in the last 24 hours by the New York Racing Association that it's going to be all synthetic for the winter meet when Belmont Park reopens coming up in a couple of years. Interesting that all winter racing in New York, Jeff, to be on the synthetic. What do you make of that?
I think it's a good idea. I'm a big all-weather fan. I think it's a safer surface. I think statistics will prove that out. You don't lose anything. You don't lose any of your grass races. Not that you'd have any in the winter in New York anyway, but it's just a really good service. We had it out here in California about 15 years ago, and we didn't have it right. Of course, horsemen complained. I guess they went on the cheap, and they didn't really do what they were told to do in terms of installing it. We had the wrong all-weather surface. We didn't have Tapeta, and then finally they just went back to dirt, which Keeneland did as well. But I'm a big all-weather. I think you'll see horses run more often. I think they'll last longer. The races are more competitive because most horses can grab it pretty easily, and you see kind of like grass where they're sort of bunched up. It's a different type of handicapping. If you're a handicapper and you have to play all-weather races, you're going to have to do some adjustment. And we'll talk about that down the road when it happens.
Right.
But I think you'll enjoy the racing. And I tell you what, everybody enjoys full fields, and you'll get more than your fair share if you have an all-weather surface that you're presenting to the horsemen.
There'll be an adjustment for handicappers. There'll be an adjustment for horsemen. There'll be adjustment for the horse population, right? I mean, where are the horses? Are they going to be all horses who normally would just, head south for the winter, and some of them go ahead and stay in New York? Will the lower class horses that typically frequent Aqueduct over the course of the winter, the inner track horses, will they just go ahead and run on the surface and figure that's where we have to play and that's where our class level fits? Will we see horses from places like Woodbine, which goes dark for 4 months out of the year, basically December through April, 5 months out of the year, no racing in Canada? So a lot of those horses have been coming south and running on the synthetic at Gulfstream. This could take away from the Gulfstream synthetic crop a little bit, keeping some of those horses a little bit closer to their Canadian roots that don't take the entire winter off. It will definitely be an adjustment. I would expect a handle drop at the beginning. That typically is the way we see when tracks go synthetic, and then they start to build back up. And as you see horses running back year after year after year, the confidence grows in horse players. Remember at Keeneland, they were having record handles at the end of the Polytrack experiment. The only reason they got rid of it there, obviously, was to lure the Breeders' Cup to Lexington. But while there is an initial among horse players and they stay away from it, over time, they kind of come back to it and they get used to it, just like anything else. And I wouldn't tell anybody if there's a new racing surface anywhere, right? When a new Belmont Park opens and they got a brand new dirt track and it's not big sandy anymore and it's a different composition, they say the composition is going to mirror what they have at Saratoga. And that's one of the reasons why it's not winterized to run on the dirt at the new track that they're going to have. So they're going all synthetic. Who knows what the reasons are specifically behind closed doors, if there's some political motivations there with the horse safety issues and all that goes with it, to go just with the synthetic track. I'm sure there's probably 20% of everything that goes into all the decisions that are made. But as horse players, you're going to kind of tip your toe in the water at first and just see how it all plays out, whether you're talking the main track or the new synthetic track that they'll have at Belmont Park. But we've got years to get our panties in a wad about that. We can certainly come up with more topics to argue about over time, but that's the newest and freshest thing that we've seen that's got people in a kerfuffle online over the last 24 hours. So all synthetic races for when they reopen at Belmont Park in 2026, the winter of 26. I guess that'd be the winter of 26 into 27, I guess is the way we're looking at that.
All I know is there are going to be horse players who are really going to attack that. They feel if they do the research, if they pay attention, watch the Woodbine races, because they're going to have a lot of shippers, as you pointed out, they might have an edge. You know something? You will. If you do the work and anything else in this game, if you do the work, you'll have an edge. I promise you. In fact, at Santa Anita, we're going to have we're definitely going to have some synthetic all-weather races on the card, even though it's just a training track, because they're going to use it in lieu of canceling the race and putting it on the dirt and the mud, which everybody scratches, they'll let them run on the all weather, which will be kind of bull ring racing at Santa Anita. That'll be kind of fun. The track itself will only
The old Fairplex days, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, by the way, I'm interested in knowing what your race of the week is going to be this week. You've been killing them of late. So, what are you looking at for this weekend?
Well, we got Delaware Handicap coming up on Sunday, so I think
Okay.
Del Cap's going to be in that consideration. Also, we'll look at Indiana Derby and Iowa Derby. We'll look at those. The Cornhusker could be one. So I kind of wait for the card to come out and evaluate and see how they look. But right now, I would say best chance will be the Delaware Handicap on Sundays. What my first choice will be if it's a good handicapping race. And we talked earlier about what the division in the Distaff looks like. The Delaware Handicap, always a very important race within that division. So that race will be coming up on Sunday. They'll draw the race on Wednesday, and we'll make our decision on race of the week. You can check that out in the ExpressBet newsletter or just in our blog section, expressbet.com or news.first.com. Yeah, we've had two good ones in a row, one before vacation and one after vacation. So the layoff line didn't matter. We just came back firing with another winner this past weekend. Hopefully we can keep that going.
And the one that I did for you while you were on vacation was a 7-horse field and 4 of them scratched. So, and it was changed surface too. So I did a lot of work for nothing, It's kind of fun to go to a track that you're not used to handicapping because everything's fresh, and things that you look up that you find things that you otherwise might just slip past you. But anyway, keep up the great work, and we'll be watching for you on an ExpressBet for your race of the week. We demand excellence, and we're getting it.
We'll be back on Friday. Jeff and I will handicap 8 stakes races for Saturday. One of those probably will be in the race of the week mix. So be sure to join our podcast First Call each and every Friday. Drops somewhere in the early afternoon hours. So be sure to look for that on Friday afternoon, and we'll handicap for you then. Until now, Jeff and I will say adieu for this edition of It's Official. And again, we'll be back Friday with the First Call podcast. Have a great day, everybody.